poppin', y'all? It's Finesse Squire, and I'm back to talk to you about Black buying power. I've been so excited to make this video because I think it's such an important discussion, because we should know where we as a Black community are spending all of our dollars, because we spend them in a lot of industries, and I'm going to break them down to you today. And I'm going to let you know how much we're spending within the United States as a whole, as a collective, and as a monolith. So let's get into it. Black buying power has seen a lot of impressive gains within the last decade. In 2010, Black buying power was at $961 billion, and now it's estimated to be at about $1.3 trillion. This is a 114% increase, and it's very exciting because it shows that we're growing as a community, that we're making more money, and that we're investing this money back into society nationally. But the real question is, where are we spending these dollars? Are we spending it at stores? Are we spending it at grocery stores? Are we spending it at clothing stores? Are we spending it at the movies? I'm gonna break all these down today because it seems really exciting that we now have a $1.3 trillion buying power when we make up 13% of the United States. It seems like it can be attributed to an increase in Black-owned businesses and more Black people going to college, and all of these things just being Black people gaining more capital so that we're able to put it back into the economy at large. So I'm gonna break down where we spend this money and really get into the crux of it. The first place, the movies! Black people love to go to the movies. I highly encourage you, next time you go to the movies, to look to your left and right, and I guarantee you one of those people will be Black. We go to the movies at higher numbers than any other race, which is why so many Black people are just popping up in televisions, sitcoms, movies, all of these things. As much as we want to believe this related to racial equity and we're making progressions and advancement in societies, all of those things can contribute to it. But Black people are extremely profitable because we are the ones spending dollars at the movies. Think about it. The Lion King, everybody was Black. Black Panther, everybody was Black. The Little Mermaid, Ariel is Black. All of these things are changing and adding Black people. Do we think that this is just because of racial equity? Or do we think it's because we have a $1 trillion buying power? Even outside of the Black community, Chrissy Teigen recently said that after she saw Crazy Rich Asians, she realized how underrepresented Asian people were by finally seeing Asian people on screen. Now we see that Asian people are going to the movies more often because they're actually seeing their people on television. That's why more shows with Asian leads are popping up on Netflix as well. Again, as much as we would like to think that these things are related to racial equity, they can be related to more of these racial demographics actually going to the movies. So yes, that is the first place that we spend a lot of our money. The second place that Black people use their dollars, social media. I feel like we really saw prior to the 2017 election, starting in about 2016, how powerful Black lingo and all of those things are on social media. It's extremely profitable as well. Black Twitter is now a known thing. It's now in so many ads, and we're just like plaguing Twitter feeds with Black culture because it's what's being consumed the most and on mass scales. That's why more Black people are popping up in media ads as well on these social media sites, because we're a large demographic of the people on social media. So we're spending money on these little ads that they have popping up into our feeds, on the little shops that they have popping up into our feeds, the cooking equipment. I don't know about you all, but I can sit on Instagram for hours and just watch cooking videos. Or those ASMR videos of people just biting into food. Those are my personal favorites. But if you look at Twitter specifically, Black lingo makes up Twitter. It is the most profitable form, and it's even on social media as well, where just little jokes within the Black community are now very prominent in the mainstream. But again, this is where we're spending all of our money, spending a lot of our time, and so people put in targeted ads towards Black people because they know that's where we are. But that's where we put our dollars. And it's also interesting, and what I'm gonna get into, is the fact that we put our money into the brands that we see in our Instagram feeds. Oftentimes, those aren't Black brands. So we have to be able to stay mindful on the fact that we have this $1 trillion buying power, but we're not necessarily flooding it into Black brands. So our race isn't seeing the gains. I don't think y'all really heard me on that. We have a $1 trillion buying power, but we're not flooding it into our race, so we aren't seeing the gains. The third thing, it should be so obvious, hair care and beauty supplies. I literally think Sally's is only open because of Black people. And one of the other beauty supply stores, we're the main buyers. Also, one thing that I found really interesting is the older generation, like Gen X and on, didn't have conditioner. Everyone just had shampoo. And so our parents used to have to brush their hair out with shampoo in it. Could you imagine having to brush your curly hair out with shampoo? That's absolutely ridiculous. So yes, now that black hair is more of a discussion and we're realizing how to treat our hair, and we're having more discussions and seeing people on social media doing their own hair and realizing that we can do it ourselves and learning from those videos, we're putting money into these hair care brands. So now they're creating these conditioners for black hair, these leave-in conditioners, curl serums, flaxseed oil, everything that we know and love. I even found out recently that coconut oil might not be the best thing for black hair, and I have to start using argan and Moroccan oil. And so there's so many different things that are going into this industry now because we're flooding our money into it. Because we love to flood our money into these industries, we need to make sure we're using them on black products. And that's just the crux of it. I just have to keep highlighting that all throughout this video. The fourth thing, athletic brands like Nike, Puma, Adidas. I know that we know Megan Thee Stallion has a Puma line. I know we see Beyonce and Ivy Park on Adidas. We see Kanye and Yeezy with Adidas. And Nike has, well, everybody black. Serena Williams, Naomi Osaka, the GOAT, Baby GOAT. I love both of them. You know, I literally consume tennis and women's tennis on a mass scale. Who else? Nike has Jordan, every single basketball player ever, like huge sports brands. But that's where we flood our money into. But when you think about it, basketball and football, men specifically, are giant revenue sports in the United States. And both of those sports are made up of predominantly black athletes. And so these companies create lines and shoe lines with these black athletes so that people will buy them because that's what the athletes look like. Again, although we want to think that all of these advancements and people getting shoes is rooted in racial equity, it is because we have such a large buying power and we're flooding our money into these markets. I just want to go back to this concept of you catering to your consumers. For example, you know where black people aren't spending money? Gucci, Louis, Prada, Balenciaga, Versace, all of these large brands. And we keep saying boycott Gucci, boycott all of these brands, when in fact, we're not even their largest consumer base. We're not even first, second, or a third when it comes to race. And so when we boycott because of blackface and boycott because of these things, they aren't having these discussions. Also, a lot of these companies are completely founded in other countries. Asia, Milan, Italy, all of these places that blackface necessarily wasn't a discussion in because it was rooted in American racism, slavery, hatred, all of the above. And so when we make these efforts, for example, and we're like, boycott Gucci, will it really affect them? Because we aren't their biggest consumer base. We aren't spending our dollars in Gucci. We don't really have a stake in the game. We don't have a stake in the game of any of these companies. And so what we can do is use this $1 trillion buying power and flood it into black communities and flood it into black brands and flood it into these areas so that we can have brands made by and for black people. But again, when you're not spending money in these arenas, in these areas, you likely don't have a stake in the game, so they're less inclined to listen to you. For example, in movies, they're listening to us because we're going to the movies, we're their buyers. But is Gucci gonna listen to us when their consumers are mostly in Europe and Asia? Are they gonna listen to us if black people, black Americans aren't their largest consumer base? And so again, doesn't mean they shouldn't listen, but targeted efforts about saying boycott Gucci, that's not gonna directly affect Gucci as much because we don't spend our money there. Or boycott these other brands. For example, boycott H&M. We don't necessarily spend our money there either. In fact, after we boycotted H&M, they actually made more money. But now they're closing more stores, so I actually don't necessarily know how that's panned out. But they started making more money because at that point, the world, well, it's still a bit polarized, but the world was extremely polarized because of Donald Trump, and all the right-wing conservatives started buying more H&M, and they didn't really suffer as much because we weren't really their buyers. So we stopped buying H&M, and then more of their buyers started buying. So again, a stake that we didn't really have in the game. So the moral of this video is just to encourage us to put these dollars back into the black community and to know where we're spending the money so we can make adjustments. And to hold ourselves accountable, because I know we say, woo, 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 black owned business, woo, woo, black support, woo, 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 yeah, we love black excellence, but we're not actually putting our money there. So go see black movies, go buy black brands, do what needs